Coverage Radio at doublecoverageradio.com, also available streaming on Facebook. I'm your host, Travis Pipes. Joining me tonight is my co-host, Dave Mogensen from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and our inaugural guest on the program, the head football coach at Wisconsin Lutheran College, Eric Treske. Eric, just wanted to say thanks for coming on the program tonight and making some time for us. Looking forward
Thank
to
you for
talking a
having me.
little bit about some of your experiences with football and the program at WLC. And first thing I want to point out to everybody that's watching tonight is both of you guys have gone through the Wisconsin Lutheran football program. So we'll obviously touch a little bit about that. And then being from Cedarburg High School, you're sort of a local connection to what your goals are and stuff with the program. So welcome to the show tonight. What was it like for you to have this opportunity coming from being an offensive coordinator at Lakeland University and having played at WLC in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I think every football coach wants an opportunity to run his own program and do things. I think all the assistants in the world have all said that I want to do things my way. So that's exciting in itself. But the opportunity to be able to do that, where I would call home, a place that really transformed me and helped me grow into the man that I've become, is really, really special. So. Dave, you probably felt the same way, that there's always been a part of me that feels like there's something special could be built here at Wisconsin Lutheran, just from the people to everything that we have, all the resources that we have available and location and all those things. So, I'm really thrilled to be able to have this opportunity and be able to give back to other warriors down the road.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You kind of swung right there for the fences. How has it really helped your recruiting pitch in terms of what you're representing, having gone through the program as a player and kind of envisioning where things are going to go for you as a head coach, in the next, years to come?
Sure. Yeah, I think it just helps knowing that, I've walked in their shoes. I ask the same questions that they ask themselves when they're trying to decide, what's the best place for me. When you talk about Wisconsin Lutheran and schools like us, we're smaller schools that are built on relationships, that are built on connecting and allowing students to truly develop themselves in a big picture, right? You don't choose a place like us just because you want to, churn out your degree as fast as possible. There's other options that you could do those types of things. You're looking to grow yourself in every facet. And so to have gone through that as a student, I can really speak to the experience and maybe address some of the concerns or also just highlight some of the things that I loved about my experience here. So.
Yeah, what's been like an important part of your development into stepping into the next role as a head coach, in terms of, somebody that kind of took you under your wing and said, "Hey, I recognize some of the characteristics. You're obviously, looking at it from a position of leadership. You've had some success running some high-powered offenses. Where do you see that fitting in terms of what your messaging is going to be to your incoming classes as the head guy?"
Sure. I think throughout your football experience, or any experience for that matter, like, you're being shaped gradually by all the different people you've had a chance to work with. So I look back at my high school experience with Coach Lier, the things that he taught us about just being willing to work hard and be selfless for one another, to be able to do the little things right. We didn't do I wouldn't say our offense was complex, but man, were we really efficient and effective with it, right? So there's a lot of things that I learned from that standpoint from him. And then going to college, Coach Miller taught me a lot about football, but even more about just being a man of character, and being able to take the lessons of the game and translate it to the rest of my life. And I mean, those are some of the biggest things that I took away from my time here at WLC. And then, through the coaching ranks, getting a chance to coach with some amazing people, both here at WLC, but also at Lakeland. Colin Bruton, I'm going to play him this year, and it's going to be weird. But I learned a ton from him, just the way he sees the game, the way he sees relationships and people. And he definitely equipped me to empower my staff. That was one thing he did really for us, is he gave us a lot of autonomy and just tried to facilitate those things. So all those things that I've learned, all those different lessons, I think have really shaped me who I am and how I try to help both our staff and our players at our program.
Yeah, you talked definitely there about sort of the role of somebody that can look at you and say, hey, you're talented at what you're doing. You definitely connect with the players. You know, you're a guy that's gone through this particular program. And you kind of had those experiences along the way. What do you see as being the biggest challenge in your position at Wisconsin Lutheran, whether that be recruiting or things you want to do with locally within in terms of what you're going to do and how you run your offense? What sort of sticks out to you as sort of, all right, this is year one. Is it stacking up to be exactly what you thought it would? And what do you see some of those things lying ahead of you?
Um, I think the biggest challenge when anyone takes over a program, expectations are high. There's a lot of excitement around the program, whether it's on camp. I mean, I've had a ton of support from the administration, and I mean, it's almost been like a homecoming, And I'm hearing from alums because I've played with so many guys, I coach with them, and it's really really cool. But with that also comes a huge set of expectations. Even our current players, right? There's this newness and freshness, and so you have a lot of optimism with it. That's great, but newness in itself doesn't make things better, right? And so the thing that I'm really trying to help us focus on is, and you hear like guys like Nick Saban talking about like the process, but honestly, being willing to focus on what it takes today to get where we want to be tomorrow. And so we've kind of adopted this phrase. The idea is just that we're trying to build day by day by day, build this foundation of what this program needs to be about. And fortunately, our players have really bought in and worked really hard at it. But that's probably the number one challenge that I see is that, when we face in week one or week two, how are we going to handle that? And how are we going to avoid we've had some struggling seasons in years past, right? How are we going to avoid the here we go again feeling that our returners may have, So
I think that's a good point there. Talking, Eric and I were both at WLC, but at different times, right? I was already gone by the time Eric got there. Our paths crossed. I knew who he was because I continued to follow WLC, and then our paths crossed in professional ranks when I got a chance to coach him in arena football. So that's how we started developing a relationship. But I remember the first time when I read the news article, the press release that came out that Eric got in, I texted him like, "Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so happy that you got this job." And I talked to guys that I knew who maybe didn't have, that I played with in the early part of WLC, that maybe didn't have the know of what Eric had done. And I said, "Hey, go check out Lakeland. Go check out Michael Whitley's highlight film." And then now they're texting me like, "Oh my God, is he going to run this crazy, this offense and we're going to throw the ball over the field?" And I said, "I have no idea, but just know what he's done and that he's done." So just from those guys, some of the guys that I played with that, came through are really excited about just to see, like you said, change, new toys. People get really excited about, right? Like, "Oh, here's my Christmas present," right? So people are really excited about new stuff. And to great point to saying that doesn't necessarily mean things are going to change drastically. Not to say they were broken, right? Like I have as much respect for Coach Miller as any coach I've ever met in my entire life. Like that guy is possibly the most underrated college coach in Wisconsin over the last 20 years. Like the things that he's done.
Oh, yeah.
So not to say the program was broken, but there's things are different now, and even the recruiting, going on Twitter and seeing all that kind of stuff and all that interaction happens now. It's interesting to see what you've done and kind of bringing that to maybe bring it to the next level.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, your teams, your offenses, coach, have definitely they have a propensity for moving the football. 2017 Lakeland finishes second in Division III, averaging 550 yards per game. First or second place in the NACC, averaging 34.8 per game in 4 seasons there. So, how do you see your role as an offensive, I would say, innovator fitting into what you want to do with this potential here with WLC in terms of your identity?
Well, first off, I want to say I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by some awesome team players, guys on our whole staff. Steve Donovan, our D coordinator, is really helping kind of fleshing things out. Mike Fossum, who's been there since the beginning, he's a phenomenal O-line coach, great teacher, great mentor. Rob Slavens has been there for a long time. Anyone from the Milwaukee area that knows, quarterback play, they know Rob pretty well. And you guys mentioned Michael Whitley. I have him, he's going to be coaching quarterbacks this year for us. So we're excited about the staff that we have, and that really helps. To me, when you're developing an offense, you have to have a degree of philosophy that you stick to, and then your tactics have to change and adapt based on your players, right? So there's things that I'll always believe in, and no matter what we're doing, it's, we're either going to try to get a numbers advantage, a space or leverage advantage, and then we're going to try to get a matchup, right? If we can't get the first two anymore. What needs to change, though, is identify, like, okay, what is our team? What are these players? What's their strengths? What are they good at? And what's going to allow us to have an advantage on Saturday? So there's a tremendous amount of talent in our program. There's tons of character and qualities that I admire from our kids. I'm really excited. And I think it starts, honestly, at the quarterback position. We have a group coming back. It's going to be really strong for us. So I'm excited about what we can do. I think our offense may look a little different than it did at Lakeland, but I think that could be a very, very good thing.
Yeah, you definitely have that background, having played quarterback and also, been a wide receiver, a sort of kick returner, jack of all trades in college. How does that factor into sort of the messaging with you as a head coach, and as you develop the identity of your program? Are you looking for people that are going to be able to buy in and say, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes? Obviously, your fundamentals are based on character. We talked about that. What's the one thing you look for in a student athlete in your program?
I think the first thing I'll say, and we got to establish it, college football is not easy. It's challenging. You go from being the man, and oftentimes you've been the man in your community and in your school from 5th grade all the way through, and you get to college, and now you're surrounded with all these other players that are incredibly talented and have all had that same experience. They've all been one of the best players on, their teams. They're in the area, in their state, And so there's a lot more competition, and you're trying to figure out who you are and where you fit in, and, the language that this team uses, the culture, all these things that are happening. And what's cool is it wasn't easy at the time changing positions in college. If anyone's ever played quarterback before, they'll tell you that it's a special spot to be in. And when Coach Miller approached me and asked me to change positions, I did it because I cared about our team, but I also, it was tough, and what's nice about it is, even though it was difficult, sometimes you go through difficult things for a reason. And now I can speak to a kid that maybe has, that's his role, right? We look and we see, you have a chance to be better at this role for us this year or down the road. And I know it's not what you're used to, but now I can say, trust me from experience, right? That even though you're not used to it or comfortable with it, it might actually be what's best for you and the team. So to be able to speak from experience on those things, I think will help a lot.
I love the word, sacrificing for the team. Obviously, football is sort of the ultimate team sport. I know you guys understand that intimately. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about what you're currently going through, sort of what everybody's going through. And Dave and I talked about this on the pre-show all week. How is COVID-19 really affecting your ability to kind of resonate and make connections, or has it helped, being able to virtually connect just like we are talking about sports and developing a relationship with those student athletes? What are some of the biggest challenges for you around recruiting and not having kids be able to take the traditional campus visits, all that kind of stuff? Walk us through what that's like for you.
I always say our most important recruits are the kids that are on our roster. So I'll talk about those kids first, the guys that we have at WLC with us right now. The biggest challenge was we had such positive momentum going in this offseason. The attendance, the work, the progress that we had made. I mean, if our coach Zeitler, he does our strength conditioning work. Matt Zeitler, Wisconsin Lutheran High School alum, phenomenal job. And you started to see these guys not only change the way that they work together and sacrifice for each other, but literally change their bodies and the way they're moving and everything. And so we were so encouraged about where we were going. And then everything got put to a halt, right? And so now the question becomes, how do you respond? And it wasn't easy, but one of the things that we talk about in our program, and I think a lot of coaches do, is how do you respond to adversity, right? I mean, that's one of the things that you learn best from the game of football. And so we talked to our guys, and each member of our staff kind of took a small group of our current roster that we're kind of keeping tabs on and staying in touch with regularly. And we just have been trying to help them overcome all the little hurdles that have kind of been thrust upon us with COVID-19 and all the adaptations that we're trying to make the best of things. So that would be the first thing, is just how could we carry the momentum that we had as a team in the off season, when we were back home, and every kid's got a different setup and a different situation, all those things.
Yeah, it's interesting. Dave and I were talking about this, and both of you guys being college athletes. Dave, what was it like for you kind of going from your senior year of high school down there at Elkhorn High, going over there to Wisconsin Lutheran, getting into the grind, getting into the routine? How does that element to this, with potential of spring activities and summer camps being canceled, really sort of affect your footprint? Maybe Dave can talk a little bit more about, what it was like for you with your first summer on campus, Dave.
Yeah, I definitely think, going back 20 years to what it was like then, it was probably very similar to what it will be like now for an incoming recruit, right? Not talking somebody who's going to be a senior in high school, but somebody that may have already committed to WLC or whatever college you're going to. What happened to me is when I finally committed, I got Coach Sipple was the strength coach and the D coordinator. He was my main recruiter. Coach Fossum actually was at my house recruiting me, which is so crazy that he's still there 20 years later. But they just, you're in constant contact and stuff, and they sent you a big packet, and it was like that thick. It was all printed out, nothing digital at that point, right? And they said, bring this packet back, filled out when you show up to camp, and then we'll test you, and we'll know if you actually did it or if you just doodled in it to say you did it. And that's
right.
what it was.
Did you get your parents to sign off on it?
Yeah, you might have got a phone call, from coach every week. Hey, how's it going? What's happening? But it was really on the athlete to take care of it and be on top of that. And there was no Twitter, there was no Snapchats. You couldn't, see what people are doing, and they're posting pictures at the beach every day. They're not really probably in the weight room, right? So you didn't have all that, and it's probably closer to what it's going to be like for guys now, right? You're not getting up to campus to work out with the team. Everything's going to be done in your own world, and like Coach said, you have a lot of people who do different things here or there, but each person is different and has different opportunities to use different kind of facilities and things like that.
Yeah, it's such a unique time. I mean, think about it right now. So students that are coming to Wisconsin Lutheran this fall are in the same situation that the students at Alabama are going through. I mean, and the same, so they have to find, you have to have a little bit of wherewithal, a little bit of creativity, and you got to be willing to say, like, I don't care, what I have to do. I'm going to find a way to get ready,
Yeah, there's an element of preparation, right? In terms of, hey, football's ended, it's your off season. For you, it's student athletes, and they're going to be going through a whole nother semester of classes. And, there's expectations in the program to, go to weight room and go to study hall and make sure you're where you need to be in that routine. Along those lines, how has that changed your perception of how prepared a student is going to be when they come into camp, if it's going to happen at all this fall?
Yeah, I think it looks very different, right? And so the expectations change. We've tried to adapt things, almost as though, okay, do you have equipment available to you? Here's your plan. Do you have nothing available to you and besides your room and, whatever's around your house? Here's your other plan. So we've tried to create two alternative paths for our players coming in. And again, our strength team, we're very fortunate. So I've been a head strength coach at the college level. My D coordinator, Steve Donovan, has as well at Valparaiso and at WLC. And then Matt Zeitler has here and at East Central Oklahoma. So I've got three guys that have been in the role of creating strength programs. And so we've collaborated a ton on trying to find a way to help our students weather this storm. And we don't have a packet anymore, Dave, but we do. I don't
think many people send out the packets anymore. That thing was, I'm not kidding you. That was like a workout every day for whatever that is, 12 weeks of the summer, all in that packet.
Oh, I had one like that too, big spiral bound thing.
Yeah,
did it come in a spiral binder? That's right, I did.
Oh yeah.
I blew Travis's mind earlier when we were talking because I had dug out the program from the first year that I still have.
Oh, that is awesome.
So the journey begins.
I do not have my workout program. I think I turned them in and we never got them back.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. You don't have you turned your workout sheets and you no longer have those. That's
unfortunate. They gave us a coach sip and I don't think they gave them back to us.
Whatever you want.
I think Dave's workout program, he doesn't want to tell us, it was leg day every day is the way I think it went for Mogensen.
Yeah, it's different, but we've tried to use video as tools, Google Sheets, right? So now kids can input their maxes and it changes over time, and it will import all the fields so they know exactly what to do. We're trying to be as creative as we can, use technology to our advantage.
Yeah, that's definitely I think the key, right? As the head guy and sort of with your staff is we can develop and implement and build these relationships and maintain them. We don't have to be in the same room physically to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of brings us to our next focal point during our conversation here, Coach Treske, is how do we see the evolution of what you guys are working towards in the off season towards football happening in the fall? When is it going to be a point in your schedule where you say we have to be in pads, in shells, hitting or whatever it is to be prepared and finally say we're going to have a season or not? Is there sort of a drop date for you in mind in that sense?
That's a good question. So I'll tell you, the plan right now is that we report to camp on the August 11th for our veterans and our newcomers on the 12th, and we practice on the 13th. And everything I'm being told and everything that inside is saying prepare for that date and adapt when you're told otherwise. So we've been trying to do everything we can to get ready, as hoping and planning as though things are going to be normal. Now we've had some meetings as an athletic department. We've had meetings as a conference with other, the other conference head coaches about, okay, if that doesn't happen, right? We're told by whomever that that's not able to happen. What's our next plans of recourse? And the one thing I'll say that's been really reassuring is that everybody in our conference is committed to playing in 2020. So whatever that looks like, it may be that no one's reporting to school until after Labor Day, right? So our season gets pushed back, or our non-conference season may not happen, some of those different things. We even discussed at the conference saying, what if school X is able to come and start as normal, but school Y can't? They aren't going to start for another 3 weeks. Are we going to be okay with that, and a competitive imbalance or whatnot? And the overwhelming consensus was we want to play. We know our kids want to play. We know it's good for our campuses and communities. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we do.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of sort of we want things to kind of go on. Dave, what is your perspective along those lines in terms of being in a coaching position and being able to say, hey, here's our condensed playbook, here's some of the expectations for the offseason program? Like, does it really ultimately affect sort of the goal and the foundation trajectory of your program?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's going to be variables to every scenario, right? So coach laid out some of the different scenarios on whether, non-conference games disappear or everybody starts late. And that's one big thing that you hear a lot is some schools are really worried that school A and school B in their conference get to start on time, and then 3 other schools have to wait 3 weeks. Now there's a competitive advantage that's built in there. So I think it's important for conferences, even from the high school level and up, right, is for conferences to kind of come aboard, like Coach said, they're doing, and kind of have a consensus of, all right, we're all in the same boat. So if school C can't start till after Labor Day, then nobody starts till after Labor Day, and kind of work it that way to help the competitive advantage kind of part go. So from that perspective, a lot of that stuff, as we've been kind of talking with our NFL stuff with the draft in the last few episodes, a lot of that stuff is not in the hands of the coaches or the staffs, or it's either high level at the university or it's even not even in their hands, right? So I think as a coach, in my experience, and similar to what Coach says, if August 11th is my date, I'm planning for August 11th, and I'm going to be ready to go for August 11th. And if it's pushed back 2 weeks, heck, I was ready to go. So I got 2 more weeks to refine what I'm doing and just make sure that my guys are on board and they're ready to go and they're keep doing what they have to do during whatever time period it gets pushed back in.
Yeah, not to trivialize what's happening here. This is a serious event, but it's almost like, if you've ever coached in a rain delay before, right, where you knew impending weather was coming, and I'm going to plan as though we can play as normal, and then the ref's going to tell me, nope, there's a delay, and now as a team we respond, we adjust. It's almost the same type of mindset you have to have in this. Obviously, there's some different precautions you have to take. We've been talking about potentially testing players before they get to camp and having, temperature gauges and all that stuff. There's been a lot of different conversations, but
what Coach Treske is the role sort of, I know we've talked about, the potential scaling back of the playbook. We talked about like sort of the logistics part of it. Where do you see the potential of your conference saying, hey, we are going to maybe play a condensed, matted down version of the conference schedule. Do you think that puts any school at an advantage? I know we talked about being on the same playing field, but geographically, does that play into the favor of one school or another versus, I have to go this far? A lot of guys, we're not getting that. This isn't the NFL. You're not getting on chartered flights. How does that affect your preparation and sort of developing the routine and structure, which is, I think, where a football team really, gets its roots?
Yeah. To be quite honest, I think the team that's most upperclassmen laden, that has most returning starters and guys with experience and guys with experience in the system. If we're cut to an abbreviated schedule, it is an advantage. My team, the reality of the situation for us is everybody that's coming in offensively is learning something brand new. And so, for us, we may have to be much more simple early just so that we're executing. Execution is always more important than complexity, right? So whereas a school like Aurora, Don Beebe does a great job with that program. He does a great job offensively there. I would imagine that they're going to be able to kind of pick up where they left off offensively when they return. I think it's 7 or 8 starters. So two very different situations, kind of responding to the same situation, which is an abbreviated season.
Yeah, Don Beebe, who is just over my shoulder here in my studio, would agree with you. I love the name reference to Aurora. There he is on the wall behind me in the studio. Coach Treske, I just wanted to say thank you for coming on the show. You're listening to and watching Double Coverage Radio on Double Coverage Radio's Facebook and doublecoverageradio.com. Coach, a couple more things we want to kind of get to before we start to wrap up here. I know you have a lot going on here with family and other commitments. What's the biggest draw for you in terms of developing that quality of life, sort of a balance? How do you sort of promote that within your program? I know college football is a commitment. Guys that go to Division III programs and some of the smaller divisions, FCS programs, are not on a full traditional scholarship. How do you really work to promote that experience for your student athletes in your program?
Sure. So one of the mantras of the program for quite some time now has been faith, family, future. And even though I'm a new coach, that's one thing I haven't wanted to change. Is I still want that to be the focus and mission of our program. And so if that's what we're going to be about, and we're going to talk about that, we need to live it, and we need to demonstrate as coaches. And so there's some things that we do, I think, to help with that. The first would be just the nature of like our weekly schedules, right? So during the fall, our players, our coaches will have no activities on Sundays whatsoever. That is time designated for family. That is time designated to worship. That is time designated to work if you need to as a student. That is time that we give to everybody to allow them to kind of have that balance. Throughout the year, I think we're trying to do as much as we can as coaches to work smart. We all work hard, but also just, in terms of putting our family above, staying in the office for that extra hour. And that's something, honestly, that I think Mike Fossum's done a really good job of helping us make sure that we keep that focus. There's been a couple times, I know, like this past spring, where we had like a recruiting day and my youngest son had a basketball game. And I'm like, hey, he plays at 9, the kids come at 9, like, they're going on tour until 10. Like, can you guys cover it for me for an hour? And he's like, you should go to that game. Like, we'll be fine, So to have someone on staff with that type of perspective is really, really helpful. And, to have a wife that's supportive and kids that understand, that the type of lifestyle that comes with coaching has been really, really awesome as well. And so I want them to know that they're first in my life, and I want my players to know that that's how it is. And so we do the best we can with it.
Yeah, it's important, I think, to sort of strike that balance in any venture in life, not just in football. It's as interesting as you bring that up. We are also going to pick your brain a little bit about recruiting as it applies to the upcoming season and then beyond into 2021. I know Dave has some questions for you about the recruiting element to that from a coach's perspective. Can you take us through a little bit of what your perspective is for planning for the next season of 2021 and kind of what your goals are there, and we'll kind of segue with that.
Sure. So one of the things that maybe is different about who we are and my philosophy from recruiting is I always believe it's important to recruit your home base hard, But I also am not naive enough to say that there's not good football players everywhere who value what Wisconsin Lutheran has to offer in an amazing city like the city of Milwaukee. So our footprint, I would say, has expanded a little bit. I know, Dave, you said you saw us on Twitter and some of those things. I mean, you can just see from the commits.
You can see it.
Yeah, we've got kids from, our starting quarterbacks from Washington. I've got kids from, the Los Angeles area, San Diego, all the way down to Florida and everywhere in between, and what I think allows those kids to feel like Wisconsin Lutheran is where they want to be is they know that they're going to be at a place that's going to value who they are and is going to, provide a sense of family as they grow as young men, and so that'll be, I think, a focus of ours, and especially like in areas like Texas, Louisiana, Florida, where I've had some recruiting connections from my time at Lakeland. What's awesome is we've had such a great amount of support from the local area. I've had a lot of local coaches contact me, and I've had a chance to clinic with them and talk with them about their programs, how we can be of assistance to them. One of the coolest advantages, I think, of being Wisconsin Lutheran and just where we are, we're about 15 or 20 minutes from every Metro Milwaukee program there is, which means we're that close to being able to help every single one of those programs and make an impact on them and their kids. And I think when those coaches and those players, when they interact with us and they get a chance to see who we are and what we stand for, I think it's just going to help them when they're making their college decision down the road. So we're working hard on 2021 already as we're kind of wrapping up that 2020 class, and it should be interesting to see how it shapes up.
Eric, springtime is a big for recruiting time. Is a lot of the coaches like to get out normally, right? Normally in springs,
Yep.
You're sending your coaches out to Texas, to Florida, to the Milwaukee metro schools, and obviously that got kind of, as your March is kind of normally you're hopefully cleaning up your 2020 class, right, and have a few stragglers, and you're really hitting hard that spring visits. How have you guys adjusted, or how have you seen other programs adjust to not being able to do that?
So we've done remote visits, which has been helpful. And obviously, it doesn't beat the real thing. But one thing that we do really well is we have full campus support when it comes to a visit. So, like, even on these remote visits, we've got professors that are willing to have one-on-one conversations with kids. We've got amazing admissions staff that are willing to obviously address any of their questions, but also take them on virtual tours. Our staff is willing to talk with any prospective recruit and have some, I would say, some more in-depth conversation where it's personal. We believe that your decision to make to decide where you want to go to school is one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in your first 18 years of life, right? It's going to set a trajectory for the rest of your life. And so we try to avoid as many mass recruiting situations as possible. That's one thing that I've seen kind of a trend lately has been it's not necessarily about the quality or depth of the relationship. It's just how many relationships can you have, and for us, that's just not what our program is about. So when we recruit a student, they're going to have a one-on-one visit, and they're going to get a chance to have a true in-depth conversation with us and get to know us, and we get to know them. And I think the kids that have gone through that, and you can ask, some of the kids that have committed and stuff, they'll tell you that's a huge reason why they chose us, is they knew, that we really wanted them and valued who they were as not just players, but people too.
Good. Yeah. Excellent points there. I think the other part to think about too in 2021 is how that affects the athletes, right? So if you're, the kids that are rivals top 10 in the state and things like that, they already have their name out there, but it's coming into the spring and then into the summer is camp season, right? I know you've worked a lot of camps. You've been working the Jeff Trickey camps for years and years and years, and camps at other universities. And we're seeing more and more camps get canceled. And that means less and less exposure for kids that are trying to get their name out there. What kind of advice are you giving to class of 2021 people, or what kind of advice can you give to kids in that aspect of how they can continue to get their name out there without those same venues available?
Yeah, so the challenge is you can't have in-person contacts, but you can still get exposure, right? And that's what's kind of amazing about social media is it's empowered the student athlete more than ever before in this process. between huddle and them, these students being able to create their own highlight films. I mean, back when we were players, you had to get your coach to cut up a VHS.
Yeah, VHS cut-ups. Yeah.
We're dating ourselves, but even like, when you had your DVD made or whatever, players are able to do that on their own time. Players are able to send it to as many coaches as they want, either via email or via Twitter. Honestly, it's probably been one of the best ways to do it. So to me, if you're an athlete that really wants to play at the college level, you've got to leverage the relationships you can create on social media. So you should have a Twitter account, and it probably should be a Twitter account that's devoted only to your recruitment. And that way you can avoid any issues that may be, what do you put on your personal account? What do you put on your recruitment account or whatnot? Have a recruitment Twitter profile, and that profile should include not just a link to your highlights, but you should have your GPA, should have your test score, should have your height, your weight, any accolades that you've received. Anytime you're involved in something or you're able to post a positive thing that you've been able to do either at your school, in your community, with your family, or for your football team, that should be up there as well. You want people to know who you are and why they need to develop a relationship and potentially offer you. So.
Yeah, what do you look for in terms of the presence on social media? I mean, obviously, when Dave played college football, and when I was going to college broadcasting football, social media wasn't even around. So, it's like you talk to kids now, and it's like I'm not up to date on all the specifics of social media. But what's important to you in terms of the perspective that you need to see in terms of what the content is? Is that something that's a factor for you in your recruiting and your messaging?
It is, for sure. I have a friend that he coached at the Division I level, and one of the things he said, social media doesn't necessarily guarantee you an offer, but it can definitely cross you off the list. And that's one of the things that in this process, it's the unfortunate nature of the process, right? But if I'm University of Wisconsin and I've got 25 scholarship offers, and I'm combing not only the entire state of Wisconsin but the country, right, to give those offers, I'm looking for reasons to cross you off, right? I've got thousands of kids that are prospects, and I'm trying to find, okay, who's the top kids, and now of those top kids, who are the kids that fit what our program's all about? And that's not just football, right? I mean, that's about who they are as people, their character. I mean, what type of son, brother, friend are you, right? All those different things on top of what type of student you are. So when I'm looking at a profile, I'm really trying to see what you're about outside of the game. I know you're a good football player. I watch your film. That's why I'm interested, right? I want to know what type of player in person you are, what type of teammate you are. Am I seeing you promote your teammates' success, or is your profile all about you, right? Am I seeing your academic accolades and some of those things? I mean, for us, we're a little bit tougher of a school to get into academically, so that's a big area of focus for us. But I think any coach would tell you they want a good student because they know that I don't have to hold his hand and make sure he's going to class and getting his work done, right? He's a kid I can lean on and know is accountable. So. Those are some of the things that we look for.
As students kind of go through and kids are looking at doing that and getting on social media and sending their video out and things like that, what do you think puts WLC ahead for somebody that's looking at WLC right now, maybe comparing it to a Carthage or Lakeland, two of the Division III schools, albeit one different conference, but that are maybe competing for kids that do want to stay close to home out of the Milwaukee area? But what kind of puts WLC over the top in your estimation over some of the other local Division III schools?
Sure. So there's a few things that I would point to. I think to me, the fact that we're a faith-based institution and we live by that, it's not just in word, but I mean, it's the way that we live our lives and treat our kids and try to help kids grow in that area of their lives. That's really important. So for students that's important to them, or students that have thought about that before, I would definitely say that's one thing that's distinctive. I think from an academic standpoint, we've got phenomenal professors. They've been rated top 25 in the country. And they do a really good job of making sure that they spend extra time to help our students be successful. I mean, the same focus we have on helping these kids develop in the weight room or on the practice field is the focus they have, in the classroom and the lab. And then the last thing I would say is just we are right in the heart of Milwaukee. And there is not a single program that can say that. We are the only program in the city of Milwaukee, and to be able to leverage that location, the connections that we've been able to make as a college, as a program, every spring, our alumni group, we have a gridiron club that Coach Fossum helped, start with some of our alums, and they helped organize a career night where we have 50 to 60 different organizations that are there just to recruit our student athletes and talk with them about their prospective careers. Some guys have been hired straight up from there. Some underclassmen have changed majors, like, whoa, I don't want to do that job anymore. We've got, I think, phenomenal resources at our fingertips. And, that's in addition to all, I think, the social benefits of being in a city like Milwaukee. So, if you're looking at some of those other schools and kind of what makes us stand out, those would be the things I would say.
That's really great insight, and I think it definitely sells the messaging around. You're not just here to play football. There's a little bit more of an element of community, and obviously you've referenced the faith element of it as well. We do have a question in from a viewer. Brian Hopkins writes in, Coach Treske, with the possibility of limited contact days this July for high school football players, what advice do you have for high school programs to get the good work in? Brian, thanks for the comment. Thanks for following Double Coverage Radio. Coach, would love to hear some feedback on the prep players and what their goals would be with the weight room.
So the advice that I've given my guys is be ready to run. So honestly, the more that you are sprinting, changing direction, controlling your body, preparing yourself for the rigors of what practice will be, the better off you're going to be. And so I know a lot of guys don't have access to the weight room. That doesn't mean you can't be in conditioned and ready to roll with your teams when you're finally back together again. And I think a lot of coaches will tell you that the one thing that limits you in camp is usually fatigue, right? You're trying to get as many repetitions to execute the right way. And the more fatigued you are and the earlier your team gets fatigued in that camp season, right, whether you're at the high school or college level, the less you're able to install and the less diversity you're able to have schematically. And so that would be the biggest thing I'd say. So as a coach, I know Brian Hopkins, he's an alum. He played for us, and he's a great defensive coordinator at Wilmot High School. As a coach, I would say you want to make sure you're giving these kids the tools to be able to do that on their own. So ways, I would say a very simple plan that they can follow and understand. And then I would say some sort of system that helps them stay accountable to one another. So for example, we're having a meeting about it on Thursday. We'll have our player families where our upperclassmen and newcomers are all paired together in a family. Those guys are now able to help check in on each other, get to know each other, build relationships with one another, but also say, hey, how did the workout go for you today? And just help each other stay accountable.
That's some great feedback. I really appreciate the response. Obviously, your guys both being alumni of the Wisconsin Lutheran program, as we start to wind down the show tonight on our inaugural Chalk Talk series featured by Double Coverage Radio at doublecoverageradio.com and available on Facebook, streaming all around the United States and globally. Coach, what's your fondest memory as a player in your experience at Wisconsin Lutheran? And we want to shoot that question across the screen here to our buddy Dave. We both were looking for some insight into what got the blood flowing for you as a Warrior back in the mid-2000s.
In the mid-2000s, my favorite memory. It probably wasn't even a game. It was just training with my teammates and pushing one another. I had a group of guys, that were roommates and really good friends of mine that we pushed one another, and we were in the weight room. We'd work. The D3 life isn't always glamorous, right? You're going to class, you're working an on-campus job or off-campus job, you're getting your workouts in when you can, all those different things. And so I can remember being in the weight room at 9 or 10 at night with those guys, thinking about what was to come in the fall. And I can remember, just practicing and pushing one another. And when you had a chance to go against one of your best buddies and you got to get a chance to see kind of who could show one another up and have bragging rights in the cafeteria, all those things. Those are the things that I'll remember, was just the time with my friends and pushing each other.
Dave, how about you? Can you talk to us a little bit about being a part of that Let the Journey Begin team back in 2000? What was it like for you going to a program where you were sort of the literal cornerstone of building something that is a tradition now that's gone on 2+ decades?
Yeah, I think that was a big selling point for me at that time, right? From Eric knows from going through recruiting, you got all kinds of schools throwing things at you, and everybody wants you to come and that kind of stuff. But it was, for me, building a relationship with Coach Miller and Coach Fossum and Coach Sipple. They were the core of building the program, right? And it was something that I thought that for the rest of my life, I could have gone here, I could have gone there, I could have gone other places, but for the rest of my life, I could always say, hey, I was on the first ever team at Wisconsin Lutheran College, and knowing that team was going to be there for a while, right? It wasn't like it was going to be like a short-term thing. That as long as I'm alive, I can go back and say, I was on the first team ever at Wisconsin Lutheran College. That was kind of a big selling point for me to go there, and it was a great decision. To this day, I was just literally, no lie, texting Coach Fossum like 2 weeks ago, like literally texting him.
That's awesome.
And if I see Coach Miller, it's like I'm back in college again, and I can talk to him. Anytime I've seen him over the course of the last 20 years, it's like talking to him like when I was 18, right? And he gives you the same respect, and he's genuinely interested in what you were doing, right? So going to WLC for me was in my eyes a great decision. As far as what are my favorite highlights, I mean, similar to what Coach Treske said, so many of your memories are not from games, right? I can think of the first big memory outside of showing up for the first day, right? Like Coach Treske said, everybody is really, really good. Everybody's bigger, and it wasn't quite as extreme for me because we didn't have a bunch of juniors and seniors, right? So it's even more extreme if you have a established program. So that part I kind of fell in a little bit easier. But I remember just how difficult training camp was, right? And getting waked up at 5:30 in the morning and going through all this stuff. And one vivid memory I have is that last day of training camp when we were going to go home. We have 2 days off, right? And listening to what everybody was talking about, what they're going to do, and everybody, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and the guys that I played with, like John O'Connor and Dustin Reynolds and Dave Zafke and some of these guys that we all had all these great plans. Then when we came back on Sunday night for our return meeting, we're all like, yeah, we did nothing. We just sat on our couch for 2 days. We were so tired that we didn't get anything accomplished that we wanted to do and see all our old friends from high school and that stuff. So that's awesome. One memory that I have that sticks in my mind. And the other one is just, playing in that first game was pretty cool, right? We went down to Rockford College, and they were a brand new program, and we went down, and everybody kind of banded together. We won the first game. There was 2 programs playing their first game ever, in Rockford College and Wisconsin Lutheran College, and only one was going to be able to say they won their first game ever, and we came out on top. And I will forever be able to remember that, and something that's kind of an exciting highlight of my life.
That's awesome. I have to say, it's the timing of when I was able to enter the program at Wisconsin Lutheran, and then the ability to kind of coach in a different time. I've been able to be connected to guys like you, Dave, that were, literally, like you said, the cornerstone of the program that saw the vision for what this place could be. And when I came in, we were in the last year at Rainbow Park.
Sure.
That's where we had a training camp in the outfield of a softball diamond at Rainbow Park, because they were finishing up the field that we currently play at now. And so to be kind of in that transition, and then it was 7 years later or something like that, they built this beautiful locker room and the facility that we have for our current players now. And I had a chance to coach and be a kind of part of that era. So it's really neat to have these connecting points to all these different people that have been along this, it's been a 20-year journey for this program. And I just feel honored to be able to kind of represent guys like you, Dave.
Well, we're excited to have you here, Eric. 'Cause I know, like I said, a lot of the guys I talked to from my time and all the guys you've interacted with, everybody's really, really excited to see what the next level is at WLC.
Thanks.
Yeah, the sense of pride from you, Coach Treske, and also, Dave, being an alumni of the program and, going through Wisconsin Lutheran and having that experience is just, it's palpable. I just want to ask a couple more questions before we start to wrap it up tonight on our inaugural Chalk Talk series, sponsored by Double Coverage Radio on doublecoverageradio.com. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram and the Facebook. If you're away from football, hanging out on your own, hanging out with your buddies, hanging out with the wife, what are you going to watch on TV, a movie or a book? You can pick one of the 3, and you are up, Coach Treske.
So my wife and I, we watch, everything, especially lately, right? Being the coronavirus, I think we've gone through almost everything in Netflix that there is.
Right, yeah.
So we've seen some good movies. We're watching this series called Dead to Me. It's not appropriate, so any kids that may be watching this, I would not advise them to watch it. But it's been kind of interesting, kind of a mystery movie, type series. I do like to read a lot or listen to podcasts, so I guess I'll go with that. So one author that I would highly recommend is Malcolm Gladwell. I love him just because he thinks kind of outside the box, and that kind of challenges me to think the same way. So if you've ever read any of his books, they all have kind of a theme behind them, and then each chapter is a different mini story supporting the theme, and so he's been an awesome read. I'm reading a book right now by a pastor named Carl Lentz. He pastors a church out in New York called Hillsong, New York, and he's also just a different. He's not your typical pastor. This guy is very unorthodox in the way he thinks and communicates the message, and so that I think is awesome. I like to be challenged mentally, I would say. So even like when we're watching shows and stuff, I don't want to watch. Although we watch like The Bachelor, but outside of that, I don't want to watch a lot of like mind-numbing TV. I want to be challenged a little bit.
I got suckered into watching an episode of The Bachelor. Listen to my heart. Not going to happen again. had to do it, so that I said I went through the motions, but here we are. So Coach Treske, one other thing for you tonight. Just wanted to say thanks for coming on the program. What advice do you have, or what would be your message to any recruits that are possibly watching this about why they should come to Wisconsin Lutheran? This is your opportunity to give them a little bit of a pitch here virtually. Go ahead and take it away.
Sure. If you're looking at a place that's going to develop you, then you need to look at Wisconsin Lutheran College. And to me, I think every student needs to think long and hard about where they're choosing, because if you're going to a place that is telling you, they're kind of greasing you up and telling you everything that you want to hear, they're not being real with you. We're going to be honest with you, and we're going to say, listen, this is where we think you can grow. Here's our plan of attack on how to help you get there. Our goal is for you not to be the same person that you came in as. We want you to feel like you've been enriched on and off the field. And I know my school is going to do a great job of that. I mean, between the administration that we have, the professors that we have, the academic support team, Res Life, I mean, all the people that are part of our college, they're going to help our students grow in their personal and academic endeavors. It's our job to make sure that we're supporting that and using football as a vessel to do that. And I love my staff, man. We got great guys that are just teachers of the game that are going to mentor you and help you grow. And I would put our developmental program against anybody else that you're going to look at. You're going to be a much better football player when you leave here 4 years later.
That is awesome. I appreciate the time coming on the show tonight, Coach. I know you have a lot going on with reality TV and your obligations there on the home front. So we wanted to say thanks for give your other half props from us for taking 45 minutes out of your schedule to do that. For more on football from the preps to the pros, Double Coverage Radio is available on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm your host, Travis Pipes, sitting in the Butler, Wisconsin studios for Double Coverage Radio. He is Dave Mogensen, just outside UW Oshkosh Titans Stadium in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Our inaugural guest, is Coach Treske. He's just across the street from Wisconsin Lutheran College. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Check us out on Facebook. Give us a like and a share, and tune in again for the Chalk Talk series. There'll be some exciting guests from the preps all the way through college and into the professional ranks of football. Everything you can handle football 24/7 on our show. Thanks for coming on the show, Coach. Thanks for joining us tonight. Everybody have a great rest of your night. Have a great rest of your week. Be safe.
Thank you.